Hello, and welcome to our second podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Rajesh Achanta, the former Vice President of Procter& Gamble based in Singapore. We'll be delving into the concept of an end-to-end synchronized supply chain, exploring what it means, how to measure it, and how it connects to overall supply chain excellence. Rajesh Achanta brings over 35 years of distinguished service at Procter& Gamble, showcasing exceptional leadership and strategic expertise in various high-impact roles across multiple regions. Beginning his career in 1987, Rajesh has steadily advanced, taking on significant responsibilities in engineering, manufacturing, human resources, and customer service and logistics. From 2001 to 2003, Rajesh transformed the Borispol plant in Kiev, Ukraine, achieving world-class results in previously struggling operations. His tenure as the product supply leader for beauty care in ASEAN, Australasia, and India from 2003 to 2006 involved leading strategic and business planning, supply network operations, and innovation delivery. During this period, he managed over 500 employees and successfully doubled volumes and profits. As a senior director from 2012 to 2017, Rajesh led the Asia planning transformation, order to cash delivery, and the professional beauty divestiture, driving significant productivity and performance improvements. As the product supply leader for Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam, he was part of a successful freedom within framework experiment that delivered superior results. In his most recent role as Vice President of Supply Network Operations for Asia Pacific markets, Rajesh was responsible for the go-to-market supply network, physical distribution, international trade, and order to cash operations, ensuring seamless operations and strategic excellence. Rajesh holds a BTech in mechanical engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, India. Let's get started. Hi, welcome, Rajesh,
Hello.
to this podcast. And obviously, we wanted to have this podcast with you to understand few uh, things, insights about end-to-end supply chain synchronization. And a lot of people have doubts and connections and stuff like that. They don't understand how this also fits into the manufacturing setup. And you being an expert, I think this is the best way to really get some few insights. And obviously, again, this is a teaser. We are not going into too much of details. It's impossible to get into the
Right.
details in 30 minutes. So,
Right.
Rajesh, I would start with the first basic question. What is an end-to-end synchronized supply chain? Like, for example, would you be able to explain with an analogy and what metrics and KPIs are the most critical in evaluating the success of an end-to-end synchronized supply chain, and how can businesses continuously improve these matrices?
That's very much in the headlines and limelight today. Nvidia, it's a company that makes chips, but not the edible kind. It's a $3 trillion company. Mind-boggling growth, and it has essentially one product. So think of the product as a one product supply chain, and the supply chain itself. I mean, if I were to simplify that supply chain, and that's where we'll talk about synchronization. It has the flagship product they have is called the H100. It's a chip that is used for AI training. And it has hundreds of customers, but 4 customers account for a large part of their business. They account for over 40% of the business. So let's say the supply chain has 4 customers, to simplify things. It happens to have one manufacturing operation in Taiwan. The customers are in the US, but the manufacturing operation is in Taiwan. They have hundreds of suppliers, but again, let's keep make a simplifying assumption. Assume that they have one supplier based in Korea. Korea and Japan have a lot of suppliers that supply these guys, but this supply chain, 4 customers, one manufacturing site, and one supplier. So when you say synchronization, what we are saying is that the supply chain is synced to actual demand. And again, so let's put some numbers here. Let's say that the 4 customers require 100 chips a day. It means that the manufacturing operation is producing those 100 chips a day. Exactly, they're not doing 200, they're not doing 50, etc. And the supplier, the one supplier who's supplying the materials needed is again supplying exactly stuff that is needed to produce 100 chips a day. So this would be called a perfectly synchronized supply chain if the demand of 100 is satisfied by producing 100 chips at the factory, and materials equivalent to the manufacture of the 100 chips is delivered on a day-to-day basis. So demand. So the important thing to remember here is customer demand. Now, you asked about metrics, and I think it's a good idea first to start with what are the most important business metrics. The most important business metrics, which is what companies report when they announce results, is what are revenues or sales, what are bottom line profits, and what is cash. How do they convert profits to cash? Reported either as a percentage of profits or in an absolute dollar number. Now, if you look at what are the corresponding supply chain metrics that correspond to these business metrics, when we think of sales, the corresponding supply chain metric is availability. So if a customer ordered 100 units, did we deliver 100? If we delivered 100, it means that we satisfied the demand entirely. So the ideal state is 100% customer service. In terms of profit, the corresponding metric is affordability. And there's multiple metrics, but one way to think about it is what sort of gross margins does the the supply chain have. And in the case of NVIDIA, for example, the gross margin is about 75%, which means that their cost is about 25% of sales. So there's a margin of 75%. And the third metric corresponding to cash is agility. And think of the metrics could be around cycle times, inventories. So these are the metrics. Inventory, capital spending is another one. Receivables and payables are other metrics in the space. So these would be the metrics that correspond to the business metrics, and depending on the nature of the business. So in the case of the this NVIDIA supply chain that we are talking about, their demand is going through the roof right now. They can't supply as much as there is demand. So clearly their focus is availability, and availability can come either by improving customer service levels, but often it can come when a product is in high demand by increasing capacity. And that increasing capacity can come either from speeding up an operation, or it can come from bringing in new assets as quickly as possible to be able to meet this incremental need. Now, in the case of NVIDIA, they already have fantastic margins and cash. So their focus at this point in time is how can they bring additional capacity online. Now, also I must say that this business, the NVIDIA business, is it's become such a valuable company because it's been able to combine innovation with supply chain capabilities. This is what it is. So if you step back and say, okay, what makes NVIDIA special? Why is it a $3 trillion company? Innovation and supply chain capability. So huge credit to the folks that operate obviously the NVIDIA supply chain that causes it to be such a valuable company.
Fantastic. So, I mean, the key takeaways for me are to create an innovative supply chain or a flexible supply chain so that you have the right product, right time, right cost at the right place, right? I mean, I would summarize.
Correct.
Would that be the right way to summarize?
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So since you mentioned innovation as well, and also flexible supply chains, and we've also realized over the years that a lot of data gathering happens, a lot of algorithms are figured out, and we have a lot of softwares that can actually trigger a lot of things all around. So how can companies effectively integrate advanced technologies like I'm scared to use the word AI because it's misused and abused, but I'll still use
Yes,
it.
yes, yes, yes.
Like AI and blockchain to achieve a truly end-to-end supply chain. So do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, well, couple of examples. So, but first of all, let's stay with that supply chain. I said a synchronized supply chain that delivers competitive advantage of business is synchronized to customer demand, and therefore the data that is needed to be able to capture that demand signal accurately, and then making sure that the rest of the supply chain, the manufacturing, materials procurement, planning, distribution, everything is linked to that demand signal. Obviously, is the best supply chain that one can have. And today, given like you pointed out, I mean, there is lots of data available because this data is now captured electronically and therefore can be shared in real time. So point of sale data at a store level is available with customers, and customers obviously use it, to figure out what's going well. Should they order more of SKU A versus B, etc. But guess what manufacturers can do? Obviously work with customers to be able to access that data so that they can use the demand signal and not have to depend on a forecast, because forecasts by definition are wrong. And to the degree that the demand signal can be accessed, then the ability for the manufacturing operation to flexibly respond to that manufacturing signal. So today, SKU A, I need whatever 20% more than what I produced yesterday. I must be able to switch to produce more of SKU A because this is what is selling well, and maybe drop the SKU B or C plan that I might have, which was depending on the forecast. So the ability to respond flexibly to the demand signal, and this goes all the way back. Likewise, material suppliers, can they adjust? If I need, what is the BOM for, producing that SKU A, and do I have the ability to be able to bring all of that, at the right time, at the right place, with the right quality and at the right cost, to be able to enable all of this. So this is absolutely, must. So that's number one. Number two is visibility. Again, the fact that there's data available means that today we can see the entire supply chain end to end. So all of us, when we are booking a taxi on a Grab or Uber or Ola, you can see where the taxi is before it comes, right? So you have the ability to be in the place, or maybe grab a coffee before the taxi shows up, etc. Now this is available at the entire supply chain level, which means that when disruptions happen, let's say there's a an earthquake, a hurricane, excessive rainfall or flooding, or there's a power outage at a supplier facility or power outage in the manufacturing facility. All of this stuff now, there's ability to see it in real time. And what does seeing in real time allow us to? It obviously allows us to respond. Let's say if something has happened on the customer end, let's say there is some event that is causing the distribution center of the customer to be unavailable. It allows us to be able to reroute it to another distribution center. So the product is not stuck somewhere. When the demand is available, the product demand can still be served. Likewise, if you find that let's say the manufacturing operation where there's a power outage, it allows us to say, okay, what are other ways of serving that demand, knowing that what my primary source was is no longer available for whatever 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever the time might be. So that visibility is a great enabler of being able to respond to disruptions in real time. But what it means is we first create the ability to see the supply chain end to end, and second, the ability to be able to make decisions quickly, but at the lowest level. So this can't be the decision is made by some global supply chain leader sitting in some headquarters location. So decisions have to be made at the level closest to where the actual execution is, and very similar to when we talk in manufacturing excellence. This whole notion of 100% involvement. So having people who understand what decisions have to be made and in their own area can make it by themselves without need for supervision. So the second area is this whole area around, I would say, visibility, external. Now, obviously, internally, the same visibility, piece applies. And I know you're very familiar with on our manufacturing operations, how we are able to use data to be able to optimize line performance, to be able to reduce scrap, to be able to get better quality, to be able to make sure we are always running on center line, etc. Or condition monitoring, so we can without line breaking down, we can we can predict and therefore obviously optimize throughput, etc. So the external data piece, but there's also an internal data piece that the folks inside a manufacturing operation have access to it. If we can use it well, obviously we can improve performance. And lastly, in terms of technology, I think also how do we design better products? In the case of NVIDIA, it's about how do they make better chips. But today there's also technologies like a digital twin where you simulate an operation digitally, the physical operation digitally. So it allows us to test an improvement that we've made without shutting down the line. So I mentioned to you the NVIDIA case, that if they can produce an extra chip, they can actually sell that extra chip today. They're running flat out. Now, but they also need to innovate. And therefore, in fact, they're reducing their innovation cycles from 2 years an upgrade to 1 year an upgrade. Now, to be able to do this while they're running flat out, it means that they need some ability to simulate. Is this new product they've created, does it run well on the line? Is it actually delivering the performance that is needed for the customer, etc.? So the ability to again use a digital twin to be able to simulate some of this stuff without actually using up line capacity or using up an asset that actually can produce a productive output, again, is new technology. Robotics, again, we see, I'm certainly reading a lot of stuff about advances in robotics. I think just like AI, the other piece that is less hype right now, but certainly I think making the same kind of advances is robotics. Now I know you and I, many years ago we were talking about lights out manufacturing, right? So could you run a manufacturing operation in the night without an operator, for example? Now, I think that is much closer now. So if you can think of robots that can run the night shift, for example, what do you have? You could have a operation you can imagine where you don't have any, you don't need lights anymore, because robots hopefully can work in the dark and don't get tired or don't get cranky or don't need supervision.
And
So
they don't need
the level of
vacation.
automation.
I said they
I
don't
don't
need
need vacation
vacation.
either. Right? Correct. So I think the possibilities, are exciting. It's actually a great time to be a supply chain professional, or within any of the nodes, to be a manufacturing professional or a planning professional, etc. No better time than today.
So I think you were alluding to it, so I better ask that question right now. So what is happening today is what I see. I mean, this has been in P&G as well as in some other companies outside. When you start looking at them to say the typical phase 4 factory of the future kind of concept, they feel that value stream mapping is the thing, so everybody says, oh yes, we are into the next phase because we are doing value stream mapping, and the value stream mapping, to me, when I look at the entire, first of all, value stream mapping is a very small component, of the entire supply chain. But I also see that they still use the traditional TPM kind of value stream mapping, whereas as we have talked, things have migrated to a lot of algorithms, digital tools, and real-time information and stuff like that. So what is your take on this? How can manufacturing sites be held accountable for their contribution to the losses? Some of it you already mentioned, but across the whole supply chain, how can they influence this?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things I would say. So first is, I think there is there is a role that manufacturing plays that's absolutely important, and there is a huge value creation opportunity, but it is not easy. So I think the many companies have figured out how to do a good job of running their own manufacturing operations, or if I extend it, the supply chain that is within their control, if you will, right? Distribution, planning, etc. That is within the enterprise. Many companies have done a good job of paying attention and improving, that leg or that node, or a couple of nodes of the supply chain within their control. The supplier and the customer nodes, are harder because the levels of capabilities are different. There's large numbers involved, and alignment is not easy, because what is priority for the customer may or may not be priority for the manufacturer. Likewise on the supplier end. And this is why those losses exist, and therefore there can't be a one size fits all. This is what I will do with all customers, or this is what I'll do with all suppliers, simply because the come from state, it is just so very different. But I would say, if we sort of again zoom out, I think the supply chain strategies that would work to create advantage for any business, and this we can get into specifics if you like, or examples if you like, Madhav. One is, I think there is an absolute need to connect the dots. And when I say connect the dots, I'm talking about between what is important to the business and what is the supply chain capability, and are these two in sync or not? Now, I know you're very familiar, but not all of your listeners might be familiar, is the use of operating strategies, right? So translating a business strategy and the reality into what parameters do I run my supply chain? What parameters within that do I run my manufacturing operations at? Which allows us to make choices on how do I accrue, what sort of inventory levels do I keep, etc. But this cascades from the business choices to supply chain choices to manufacturing choices. If we don't understand that, and we make choices for the supply chain or for manufacturing in isolation, typically they'll create leakage. And this is all internal, right? So we haven't even talked about the external piece. So first part is connecting the dots. The second part is connecting the pipes, right? So which is with the suppliers and the customers. The supply chain doesn't stop with our factory dock and ends at the factory dock. It goes much further in both directions. And therefore, the ability to connect the pipes, and this is obviously the harder part of the work. How can we connect the pipes? And some pipes are fat, some are thin, some are no water flows at all through these pipes, etc. So how can we do that is a second strategy, if you will. And third is commercializing capability. Do we understand what is important externally, and therefore can we commercialize capability? If you want, we can go into maybe an example each, etc. in each of these areas, Madhav. If you like. I don't know how we're doing on time, but you let me know.
I think we'll keep it for the next session.
Sure.
So this is more like a very top
Sure.
line, but definitely we'll keep it for the next session. So that brings me to probably our last question, which is,
Okay.
we have AI on one side, and we also have so much of data, and we have, as you rightly mentioned, it gets more and more complex when you're looking into the vertical and horizontal nodes, and you're looking into the pipelines, as you rightly mentioned, and then having this whole discussion on operating strategy. So how important is the collaboration in this whole thing? Especially with the manufacturing sites having collaboration, because you said it is tough because you're going beyond the walls. This collaboration of manufacturing plants with the customers, with the suppliers on the other side, what would be the key challenges leveraging the vast amount of data that gets generated, and what strategies can really organizations adopt to mitigate the risks and disruptions in a synchronized supply chain, especially in the face of global events? So you suddenly have the prices of commodities
Right.
going up, the oil prices go up, the cacao prices go up, and then you have the pandemic coming in, you have geopolitical
Right.
issues everywhere. So
Right.
how do you quickly respond? Because you also said you need to be a flexible supply chain. We also had this
Right.
issue a while back, in our own company as well.
Right. 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 Yeah. Well, I would say if I go back to the strategies piece, right? So connect the dots. So first of all, we are in an environment that is going to be more volatile than before. I think that is real, and therefore, to the degree that we recognize that, we say that flexibility and agility is going to play an even more important role than it has in the than it was in the past, for example. Second, commercially speaking, if you look at the environment we are in, things like interest rates are going to continue to be high. Inflation and interest rates. Inflation is high. What does it mean? Things like wages are going to go up, material prices are going to go up, typically at a faster clip than they have in the past. Interest rates are high. What implications does that have? When we are making choices of buying assets, for example, the hurdle rates are going to get higher. So this is the environment in which we are going to be operating in, and therefore, if you think of the three metrics we started with, right? So availability, affordability, and agility. And I talked agility already. In a more volatile environment, we've got to become more agile, more responsive, which requires data. To get data, we need that collaboration, and therefore that work has to be done. It has to be done one customer at a time. I gave you the NVIDIA example that 4 customers account for 40% of the business. Knowing that, let's say if NVIDIA is trying to work on flexibility, they'll say, hey, what can I do with these 4? I can't work on all 100 customers at the same time. 4. Now that's true for every supply chain, right? Every supply chain may cater to hundreds of customers, but it's likely that a small part of those customers account for a significant chunk, and therefore, where do I begin? I got to begin with where the where it is most important, if you will. And then around affordability, knowing that we are talking about a situation where costs are going to go up. Now, within manufacturing, we've already already looked at loss analysis, but typically they are within the 4 walls, right? So thinking of how do I take that the idea of losses, but going beyond the 4 walls, because given the challenges we have, just tackling optimizing the losses in the 4 walls is not going to be sufficient to meet the business requirement. And therefore, how do I work with a few customers? How do I work with a few suppliers? And look at losses on a broader scale to be able to do that. And value stream mapping is one tool, like you said. I mean, it's not the only tool, but certainly it's a tool that's available, and to look at both cost and cash losses beyond just the 4 walls of the manufacturing side is at least a beginning, together with all of this data that is available. Helps us to get started on what are the most impactful losses that we must go after, and how do I begin to go after them, and how do I enroll whoever I need to enroll. So in the old days we said, look, improving the manufacturing operation performance, I enroll everyone in the manufacturing operation. Now I need to enroll business stakeholders as well as customers and supplier stakeholders where it's needed, in order to be able to make the kind of impact that is
And also keep
possible.
an eye on the
So the
competition,
stake,
right?
absolutely. As also keep your eyes on the competition, because that tells you, what levers do you have. So sometimes, if competition is doing a better job, frankly, an easier thing to do might be to say, okay, what is someone else doing, and if that's visible, maybe it allows us to short change the rate of improvement that we might make. On the other hand, we may find there's something we do really well, and that allows us to I talked about commercializing supply capabilities, allows us to do that. For example, if we have great customer service levels, we can work with customers and say, look, if there's a disruption that prevents a competitor from supplying a promotion, count on us, because we will always be able to do that for you, and do that at short notice. That's a way to commercialize supply capability. We often think, look, I don't have a job. The sales guy is the only guy who talks to the customer. But the more we understand both our business and the more we understand our own capabilities, the more we can, play a much bigger role than the traditional role that we play.
Fantastic. I mean, that's brilliantly explained. Thank you so much. So I will end it here, Rajesh, because this is again, as I said, it's a teaser podcast. So
Right.
we're just trying to figure out what could be the response. And then based on further questions, we might get into more and more details as we go. So as usual, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much, and wish you all the best and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise.